Good afternoon, everybody. This is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading on July 23rd, 2024. It's 8 p.m. And of course, I'm in YouTube timeout. Yes, I have timeout because somebody reported a video that I posted a year ago. Zacho's Breedlove Ewing. He had some binaural beats. He created a lot of music and stuff, and he had some words scrolling on a screen. And I think it was immediately after I did the video about beware of the cyber stalker, and it was on my birthday, so why not, so somebody reported it. It was removed. I appealed it, and it was really weird. Like, usually an appeal will take a while because they have to review the entire video, which probably was 40 minutes, maybe a little bit more. Well, they reviewed it in pronto time and just denied the appeal. So I feel like I've been compromised. So anyway, in honor of Dr. Robert Duncan, I purchased his book Project Soul Catcher Volume 2. I couldn't find Volume 1. Either it's out of print or it's very costly. So Volume 2 is Secrets of Cyber and Cybernetic Warfare Revealed, Declassified, Robert Duncan and the Mind Hacking Strategy Group. And I'll read what's on the back of the book for you guys. Volume 2 details the CIA's practices of interrogation and cybernetic mind control in their pursuit to weaponize neuropsychology. It covers the art of biocommunication war. Human beings are complex machines, but their inner workings have been deciphered. Mind control and brainwashing have been perfected in the last 60 years. Oh, great, it's been during my lifetime. Hacking computers and hacking into individual minds are similar. The 21st century will be known as the age of spiritual machines and soulless men. Isn't that wonderful? Just wonderful. So anyway, at the bottom, the Mind Hacking Strategy Group is a consortium of conscientious scientists who report the abuses of science. Robert Duncan holds multiple degrees from Harvard University and Dartmouth College in Applied Sciences and Business. He has worked on projects for the Department of Defense, CIA, and Justice Department in his career. So what I did and what I usually do is, I'm just this way. I don't usually read the book from page 1 through. So I'll just open the book and I'll just randomly select something. And of course I open the book to psycho bombs about personality and Manchurian candidates. I thought it was really interesting considering the fact that I posted several videos on the rarest personality types and how I felt that and asked a lot of targeted people what their personality types were, and they fell between these particular categories, that they're targeting us also for our personality types. So I found it interesting that I opened up the book and it immediately takes me to this one called Psycho Bombs. And what it is psycho bombs are inducing mental illness or merely mimicking the symptoms of those behaviors is objective. So rather than start there, I wanted to go to the front of the chapter. So I started moving the pages forward and whatever. So then there's denial of service attacks, infinite looping, and then I go to the beginning of this particular section of the book, and this is page 41, as follows. This section covers some of the malicious payloads from mind viruses, replacing personalities and memories. How about that? These people think that they're God. They want to play God. They want to replace your personality and your memories. Information streams, simulating dreams, interactive mind control, systemic overthrow. Just like with NASA, also known as Nazi, NASA Doesn't it sound the same? NASA, NASA, offers to build, quote unquote, and YouTube, I'm reading a book. YouTube, just for the record, I'm reading a chapter from a book. This is for educational purposes only. So just like with NASA offering to build terrorist brain printing devices in airports, the reverse technology is also available. One not only can classify personality and moods, but induce them into a host. Oh, that's what they did to that honey pot cat. They gave him a new personality to attack me. Oh, now I get it. So not only can one classify personality and moods, but induce them into a host. This has been the thrust of much of the CIA's behavior modification experiments and splitting personalities. These people are nuts. Let me just say it flat out. Behavior psychologists who work on creating Manchurian candidates, like the one that was at the top of the roof recently, that one that they had to take out that 20-year-old, that one. Behavior psychologists who work on creating Manchurian candidates and remote control assassins, see what I mean? Have used trauma-based mind conditioning methods in the past. Usually they choose adults and children who have been sexually or physically abused. And that would be an interesting survey to take within our population to see if we experienced that in childhood. And I could just say for the record, I did not. The worst physical abuse I received from my parents was being put in timeout, like I am now with YouTube Land, and not allowing me to watch my favorite TV show. In recent decades, they have been trying a new technique of walking well-adjusted targets back into childhood under hypnosis and inserting child abuse memories. Oh, you effers, you better not be doing that. It never happened. You're going to put abuse memories into people that didn't have them? What kind of sick people are you? You are sick. This helps with the process of breaking their will and splitting their personalities. Our research team could not find any successful experiments using this particular process. Of course, you're putting memories into somebody who did never experience that. It doesn't coincide with their soul. It doesn't coincide with their unconscious. You people are really ill. And Robert Duncan, I wish you were still alive so we can have this conversation. Governments spend enormous resources on unifying the populace. Religion has traditionally been used to unify cultures. However, a more intrusive form of unification has begun, which develops children and adult brains within a very constrictive box. Dream and thought entrainment. Brain entrainments over the population is being tested, quote unquote, to see if they can restrict and induce a limited set of thoughts, thereby controlling popular opinion. Well, what would that mean? Controlling popular opinion, coercing human perception to a common reality, and in essence stealing their souls from self-determination without their knowing consent. Do you think that's these sheeple people? Think it's the sheeple people? Or they want to control people to a particular opinion so that they all VOTE the same way, if you get my drift. Governments find it easier to govern when everyone thinks the same. Could you imagine how boring the world would be if we all thought the same? That's nuts. Personality implantation using electromagnetic entrainments helps this agenda. See, they're even calling it agenda. Think of this as a virus that copies itself to every human being, effectively taking over the natural order of society. These are mad scientists. I injected that. In computers, certain segments of memory can be protected from other segments writing or reading to them without the correct permission. In this brave new world of mind monitoring and hacking, certain thoughts will cause a panic or trigger an alert for the operating system to handle. In this case, the operating system could be a big brother government. The US and Russia are the biggest users of mind monitoring networks. Cognitive containment is an active approach to limiting the probability of certain thought patterns. For example, if a government wanted to keep the awareness of existence of mind hacking technology down to a minimum, they could dampen or divert thought patterns that were leading to the understanding and rediscovery. Oh, isn't that interesting? They really don't want us to know what they're doing. Thank you, Robert Duncan, Dr. Duncan, for putting it in writing so that we can all read it. Classical methods of discrediting government technology secrets that leak out using psychological tactics, which make the ideas appear absurd or like science fiction, program the populace using the mass media information stream and still seems to be preferred today. Cognitive containment also includes thought and memory filters, which evolved out of the CIA program EDOM, which is Electronic Dissolution of Memory. Entire populations could be made to forget about Holocausts, for example. This is not an exaggeration of the capability of the current technology. Specific memories can be targeted as well as general thought patterns. For example, the propensity towards violence can be amplified or dampened in the target hosts. Wow. These people really want to create more crime and more psychosis. They want to create it. Now, in the most extreme cognitive containment techniques become a mind prison. This is why this technique is listed as malicious payload of mind viruses. The payload forces an obsessive compulsive mental focus on just a few topics. In an ever more extreme form, it is just perpetual, infinite looping and repetition of thoughts and words. This payload completely shuts down the host, be it a computer or biological. This was one of the first capabilities discovered back in the 1950s and 60s. There are patents on this stuff going back to the 50s and 60s. Simply by amplifying a target's brain signals back into the same host, disables their ability to think clearly. See the chapter on the U.S. weapon system called SATAN, S-A-T-A-N. Well, what a apropos acronym that is, huh? Since the advent of computers and digital signal processing, the effect can be even more amplified by random pathway amplification of millions of stored patterns that can be triggered by template recognition techniques of the brain's bit streams. Alter personalities, i.e. split personalities, is a form of portioning a human's memory and personality banks. So what these psychopaths, these mad scientists, they want to insert memories that you never had before and steal the ones that you had. It's craziness. Infinite looping. Infinite looping is another form of denial of service attack. In the psychology industry, when it occurs naturally, it is often termed a brain lock, leading to obsessive compulsive disorders like washing the hands, cleaning, or even anorexia. But in the induced complex, it generally exhibits a cognitive quality of paranoia and people watching them. Oh, come on. We all know that every targeted person in the United States knows that they're being surveilled. I mean, that's a fact. That's an absolute fact. They don't even admit to it. The human virus computer program can find patterns of the mind that will loop over and over again with each stimulus with no diminishing quality. This is just one kind of attack into the human mind that creates a limiting cognitive containment signal. The average human's personality and speech patterns are far more limited than the subjective experience would be led to believe. Most people loop and say the same old things like a dementia patient of war, forgetting who they have been told their life stories to. Oh, like, I became targeted when I lived at 52 Sutton Drive, Manalapan, New Jersey, in a home I lived in for 30 years as original owner. Yes, and then the Manalapan Police Department, they were on my tail like white on rice because they wanted my house. They're the original real estate mobbers. They discredit everything. Yeah, I'm just going to keep saying it until somebody picks up on it. Horrific and strange obsessions can be created. For example, there's a rare example of people who have an obsession with amputating their legs and hands. Oh my goodness. This seems normal in every other way. The mind virus that locks in this brutal obsession is very feasible these days. If the brain signal can be recorded or artificially created, it can be fixed to be constantly triggered in any target brain over and over. These are just variations on the same technology that is used to create psycho bombs, for example. Just neuroprogramming through repetitive training sets into a target brain. The program can be anything from obedience to obsessions to washing one's hands. Demons. Demon is a computer science term. I didn't know that. It's a computer science term which means services that run in the backgrounds. Well, I think I have some demons in my laptop. In Windows operating systems, they are called services or device drivers. They are programs running in the background that can be triggered or constantly running to control other systems. In our research objective, they can be used to control emotions and personalities in humans, for example. The word demon is very appropriate given how the mythology describes demons as possessing one's mind and body. No exorcism can defeat neurological weapons. Crashing the operating system through error amplification. An interesting strategy for mind viruses to take control over civilizations came from HIV. If one can build a virus that attacks the most aware, most intelligent, and most likely to recognize the infection first, the virus will be more successful at dampening an immune response from the system to defend itself. Certainly, it would delay a response, at which point the infection might have already spread significantly to the point that there is no free thinkers left to respond. There is Russian literature which looks like it was written by a native English speaker that describes how they made sure that they took out the greatest thinkers in their culture first when implementing this kind of society control strategy. This is why they target all these very brilliant kids. The Cold War was very much a strategy of taking over governments and culture around the world. We now say these countries have puppet governments. The simplest and often accidental malicious effects of computer viruses is a destabilization of operating system to the point of crashing it. Poorly written viruses will crash an operating system and is a symptom one should take notice of. In the world of mind hacking, crashing the operating system has a couple of different meanings. One is literal. That is, through cloning an attacker's brain patterns onto a target, visual hallucinations, hypnotized states, and aggressiveness can all be used to make the target crash a car or an airplane. This is a popular objective for silent assassins using the mind hacking systems. The other parallel to crashing the operating system is to destabilize either an individual mind to the point of cracking or becoming dysfunctional. Later in this book, discussion of specific systems will reveal how they're used for this objective. For example, to create a bipolar disorder in a target, Alice, ALICE, a chatterbox program, is used to amplify the emotional swings of the target. In counter resistance techniques, this is called, quote, ego up and ego down, unquote, as well as Jeff and Mutt. Actually, it's usually Mutt and Jeff. See the chapter on ABCs of severe interrogation techniques. At a greater scale, the objective is to destabilize a government and make it dysfunctional. Oh, is that what that's what's happened to the United States. I see. The latter objective has historically been practically implemented by inciting civil wars in third world countries to destabilize them and to oust a leader not obedient to the mind hackers organization's demand, usually under the umbrella organization of the oh my goodness. Usually under the umbrella organization of the United States. Oh my goodness, Dr. Duncan, you're too much. Oh my goodness. Okay. Denial of service attacks on computer systems are one of the most devastating to online businesses. A store like Amazon.com can lose millions per hour. But the worst hit is to the capital market's view of the business's security. This uncertainty often leads to billions in market valuation loss manifested by the option and stock price declines. Denial of service attacks can be done to many kinds of electronics, such as phones and faxes. Jamming is a form of denial of service attack. Oh, that happens here all the time. In its simplest form, it can be done through repeated calling to a phone number, for example. The reader has already learned about reverse signaling to sensors called reverse echo techniques, ultra-wideband, and cycling jammers and adaptive jamming algorithms. But in the mind space, natural language takes on the form of jamming information from the sender to the receiver. The Mind Hacking Strategy Group tested the NSA system, also known as Echelon, by flooding it with keywords and knowing their triggers by piping messages through Arabic countries' networks. The MHSG, which is Mind Hacking Strategy Group, were warned by the Cyber Warfare Unit to quit effing with us. He really has that written here. They are paying attention. This was a denial of service attack to the Echelon system. The denial of service attacks are not just to cell phones, but entire areas of countries can experience satellite jamming of their radio broadcasts, TVs, infrared car locks, garage doors, and alarm systems. All signals from remotes can easily be jammed and copied for total control. Traffic lights that are equipped with infrared sensors can be hacked to turn green. They look for the flashing of ambulance lights, but flashing your brights at the right timing intervals will also force them to change back to green, denying the cross traffic signal. That's fascinating. Did you hear that? Look for flashing of ambulance lights, but flashing your brights at the right timing intervals will also force them to change back to green, denying the cross-traffic signal. You, the reader, will learn a lot of spy tricks in this book. Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. Remember to use your knowledge for good and not selfish purposes. It's easier to destroy than create. It is easy to be greedy and childlike than to look out for your fellow men and control your greed and power. Mind-hacking technology has become so popular among many Department of Defense divisions that each research lab has its own language and spin on the techniques. For example, the quote-unquote Directed Energy Directorate, operated by the Air Force. Oh, is that why all the drones fly over our homes? Operated by the Air Force, calls the mind-hacking program, quote-unquote, the Personnel Effects Program. It discusses confusion of the enemy as well as controlling all the senses from visual hallucinations to temperature and smell. They even brag about taking over the will of a person who is operating a machine and thereby controlling the machine. The U.S. Army calls their program the Zombie Projects for fearless, remote control soldiers. The CIA has the longest list, but started with MK Ultra mind control. Even the so-called Honorable Navy has their human experimentation of the recruits with mind control, LSD, extreme doses of electromagnetic and experimental, I can't say it on the they tube, the jabby wabbies, the experimental jabby wabbies. Okay, you know what that is. You know that little thing that goes in your arm or whatever else, where they put it. Well, when I was growing up and a kid, they used to give them in the tushy. Let's see what else I want to read here. The effects of this kind of denial of service attack, also called remote lobotomy by the CIA, remote, would be identical to psychosis. Every single human being has been made to believe that if you hear speech and respond to it, that person is crazy. We have all seen homeless people walking around talking to themselves. This kind of attack would precisely mimic several forms of mental illness as defined by the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Mimicking illnesses is what this agency has invested so many resources into for the purposes of discrediting. This book has no intentions of diving into the political aspects of the history